Good evening, everybody. Our apologies. Our presenter has some technical issues that we are trying to resolve, and hopefully it's going to take only a few minutes. We have our IT on the case, so bear with us, and soon we will be able to see Ahmed and start with the presentation. My apologies again. Hello again. So we have managed to fix only a part of an issue. So we will hear presentation, of course, but we won't be able to see Ahmed tonight. So Ahmed will be present by voice only with us. So good evening again. My apology again. This was unexpected, and I appreciate and thank you for bearing with us. As every time before we start with our webinar, I will take you through a few notes on how the webinar will go, and things points regarding the platform that we're using. So I will introduce myself for the ones that have not met me or seen me before. I am Billy Tesek, the president of NAWIC Qatar, National Association of Women in Construction. On behalf of NAWIC Foundation Board, I would like to welcome and thank you for joining us. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to our partners and sponsors for joining us. Qatar University, Public Works Authority Ashghal, GHD, Parsons, GSonic, ERGA, Qatar Financial Center, Lean Construction Institute Qatar, LCI, TMF, and Turner & Townsend. And as I said, before we start, I will just note a few points. The session is being recorded and will be available with a copy of presentation slides next week. To receive your electronic attendance certificate, you are required to attend the presentation for at least 90% of the time. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the question box on your right-hand side. We will have an answer session after the presentation, and in case we do not manage to answer all the questions, we will send you the answers with the recording next week. The webinar, including question and answer session, will approximately last for an hour and a half, and we appreciate your full attention during the presentation. Also, we would like you to indicate your feedback with plus and delta sign, plus for positive feedback and delta sign for any suggestions regarding our improvements you can make. Now we got to the most important part of the evening, and let me introduce our presenter, Ahmed Afifi. Ahmed is a well-known construction professional who specializes in contract management. He currently holds a position as a contract manager with Hill International. With more than 15 years of experience in construction and industrial project management, Ahmed has worked 8 hours in Africa and MENA region. He holds masters in construction project management from Heriot-Watt University, construction law and arbitration masters from Robert Gordon University, and he is an accredited project management professional. Ahmed is a board committee member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, Egypt branch, fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and an incorporate member of the Chartered Institute of Buildings. Ahmed will now take us through his presentation on how construction contracts may absorb the outbreak, recommended painkillers used to keep playing construction during the pandemic era. Ahmed, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Billy, and for the introduction and for inviting me to speak in this prestigious institute. I would like to start now, just for the sake of time, the presentation and the idea of the presentation. Okay, Now talking about the construction, especially in this time of the year, and this time of the pandemic, which is maybe a challenging situation. We all the daily basis, daily activities of the construction is only directed to the correspondence, normal correspondences, and normal claim, extension of time claim, maybe disruption. But at the time of the pandemic, which is I'm sure that, or maybe 90% of us did not practice this before, it triggered many ideas, the construction industry, and many challenges, as we will see in the presentation. So the presentation will outline, will talk about what does the pandemic mean. Pandemic meaning, and as the word pandemic, and to construction industry. What are the challenges or limitations that have been imposed by the COVID-19? Is it considered as a force majeure? Potential consequences, the anticipated actions on proper actions from the contractor side, and the famous reasons of related disputes, and tips to mitigate the disputes, and for sure go through the conclusion. So as just discussed, the presentation will talk about the COVID-19, the shock that all we have once we experience the COVID-19. For sure, we heard about the COVID-19, that something hitting China November as normal, and then sometime nearing mid of February or early March, the World Health Organization started to say, ladies and gentlemen, this is a pandemic situation, and we need to take precautions to limit this this virus spread all over the world. So the most of, or many countries have issued some decrees, imposed a decrees on the country, on those people, and then the people are working on some areas, and most of them, or many of them, or the majority of them, the construction industry, or any industry that is related to the construction or serving the construction. So the presentation will talk about this, and what does the COVID-19 have imposed. The idea is it a normal claim? Is it a different type of claims from the contractor side? And then, which most probably the disagreements will create disputes. So with some tips to not to go inside the disputes or go through the disputes, and to limit the impact of the disputes between the parties, with some tips how to decrease those or minimize those disputes. Starting with next slide, which is what does pandemic mean? Honestly, myself, when I heard that the word pandemic from the COVID-19 as announced by the WHO, or the World Health Organization, I stopped a minute and say, what does pandemic mean? What does pandemic mean as an English word or as a word? What does pandemic mean to the construction industry? So the simple definition of the pandemic, it's an epidemic, and this word is so important, an epidemic occurring worldwide or over a very wide area, crossing international boundaries, and usually affecting a large number of people. So by saying this, I only trying to translate what this. Okay, this is. It seems to be the situation. It's epidemic occurring worldwide, crossing the countries. Myself, I was in the United States in the first 10 days of March, and then once I came back to Egypt, nothing was going on outside. Once I reached Egypt, they announced the closure of the airport. So okay, something is going on. So, but okay, what does the pandemic will impose on the construction industry? So there's a big thing is going on. Big infection, the spread of the infection is so quick. So from the practice, once the government says on 19th of March, I'm talking about here in Egypt, may differ from country to the other, doing this and this and this. So it creates something like limitation, or maybe on some situations or some cases, impossibilities of undertaking the ongoing works and the related works. I mean, it's not only the working on site, it might be something, as I said at the beginning, serving the construction industry. So the famous question is it a force majeure? Really, is it a force majeure? So from my perspective, the first beginning, yes, I said yes, for sure, it's a force majeure. It's something happened beyond the party's control, and this any contract in the world will say this is a force majeure. So by the time when I'm viewing the FedEx contract, I said no, it's not a force majeure. The FedEx clause says clearly if a party or will be prevented from performing its substantial obligations under the contract by force majeure. So it requires prevention. So the doctrine of the force majeure is to impose prevention on the works. So let's say the prevention is like something happened and then the project is closed for unidentified time. So it's an open end, like a big time of suspension, but created by the nature. So as far as I understand, maybe it differ from country to the other, but here in Egypt, COVID-19 did not create prevention, at least for the construction businesses. It creates somehow limitations. So the limitations definition came from the decrees which the company or which the government have imposed, like the distancing, like the curfew, like the safety and security measures. Okay, next one, when we say how did the FedEx deal with the COVID-19 event? So there is a mechanism in most of the FedEx contracts. It maybe it's not the same from color to the other or from the type of the other to the other, but there is in the construction ones, maybe this is applicable for 1987, 1999, the red books, and the pink ones was the MDB harmonized. So when say the contractor shall be entitled, subject to subclause 20.1, to an extension of time for completion, if and to the extent that completion for the purpose of the subclause 10.1, a taking over certificate, in particular the part of D, because the subclause is somehow A, B, C, and D. So D says unforeseeable shortage in the availability of personnel or goods caused by epidemic or governmental actions. So let's take it from the end. It said unforeseeable shortage in the availability of personnel or goods caused by epidemic or governmental actions. So that's why I said in the second slide the word epidemic and the definition of the pandemic is a big deal. So they mention in the FedEx that unforeseeable shortage, which is occurred by the lockdown everywhere. If you are exporting or importing material outside for the construction industry, like some like the fit out items came from Spain, came from Italy, came from Germany, came from wherever around the globe. So there is limitations and shortages for the goods caused by the epidemic and or the governmental actions. So both were happened. So it is recommended to the contractors to use the subclause to secure the rights for time and or money as the case may be. Okay. Next one. So what are the challenges, limitations have been imposed by the COVID-19? If you are saying, I'm just discussing this from the perspective from the majority of the decrease for the Middle East, Europe, and Africa. So when we say limitations, maybe fall down for four categories. Most of the countries have issued the international borders closure. So once we announce that next week, ladies and gentlemen, Cairo airport will be closed. So in the project, like the big projects, which may have 20% or 30% of expatriates, so they will think about, shall we complete or continue working, or we go back home with our families? So this is the first shock. This a disruption happened that the people, or most of, as far as I saw in that time, March, most of the expatriates went back, especially the management people who can work remotely. So the expatriates movement limitation, they went back and everything is closed to the unknown time, and no one knows when they will come back. And by the way, some clients are not accepting even the people to work outside the project, even they are in the management team, who are not required to be here 24/7. Abroad procurement suspension. So let's say that the material have been quotation ready for shipping just before this, or let's say air freight. Everything stopped, especially for the big items. Meetings shifted to be online. I see this as a healthy situation after practicing this, despite the fact that the seminars and the presentations is are not a good one to do it remotely, but it's okay. It works. Second thing is countries lockdown. Actually, here in Egypt, we didn't face this, but we were in our project. We were, or we still are dealing with the Spain and Italy factories for the fit-out items. And then they announced the lockdown maybe before the date of Egypt, maybe early March. And then once they have the lockdown, they send us suspension notices. And this is a big number of material, a big number of people who are affected. So this is the first thing. Most of, if not all, factories for any related products, so maybe those items needs exporting or importing from anywhere else, which have been as well impacted. Then the curfew, I'm not sure if all the countries have imposed curfews, but here in Egypt, we started the curfew like from 4 a.m. in the morning, from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning. So 6 p.m. all people should be at home or at their whatever the campus. So they need to be there at 6. So they need to leave the project maybe at 3 or 2, because there are drivers who are taking them back and forth between the project and the home or their home. So they need to be back at 6. So maybe the work stop at 2 p.m. and starting at 8 p.m. So the working hours decreases from 12 to 6. Spread status in the working area. I mean the daily status of the positive cases. Maybe I'm sure that 95%, 99% of the projects, especially at the beginning of the COVID-19, was carefully watching the status of the spread. And then when you suspect 10 people as a positive cases, the 10 people will be out of the project for the 14 days, or for the symptoms to be gone, and maybe to do the test or the retest and the retest until they get negative. And not only the 10 people and whoever communicated with them, which may be 50 people. per day. So suddenly you're losing 60 people of the workforce. All of us until the moment are watching and expecting the vaccine. Countries' precaution status, red green zones. I mean that this is just is impacting the rejoining of the expatriates. Until the moment, we are in August, September now. Some of the expatriates are afraid of coming back to work. So this is what I mean by red and green zones. So next one, what are the potential consequences of the COVID-19? In conclusion, the COVID-19 have created disruption to the construction works. And the disruption is really a big deal. Many activities have been impacted or still to be impacted. This may lead to change of the work sequence. Disruption, I mean that maybe for the first weeks of the COVID-19, we literally were not aware what shall we do. So the disruption is like something fall from the sky to the land, which everyone is running away from it. But suddenly, but at the end, you need to come back to take out this whatever is coming from the sky. So many activities have been impacted. The scope, the delays, creeps. Employer may resort to solutions like involving more contractors. So disruption inevitably causing friction. What is a disruption means to the construction industry? The simple definition of the disruption, ladies and gentlemen, is a break or interruption in the normal course of or continuation of some activities. It's exactly like this. We are going to the right side and something came and cut our road, crossing the road, which creating disruption. Or something like this when something is happening and you cannot, you need some time to rearrange the work. So next one, what is the disruption? Continuing with what is the disruption means to the construction industry. So examples, real examples from the practice, assigning new contractor to undertake some works that have not been assigned to the existing contractor, and this is a big deal. Assigning new contractor to any of the scope that have been awarded to the existing contractor is totally different from the case. So what I mean here is assigning new contractors or new contractor to the works that have not been assigned to the existing contractor. Changing the sequence of the work, like the priorities of the areas because of, let's say, the opening, or we need the project, we need this area before this area, which is happening every now and then by the clients. This is a disruption. The COVID-19 may force the work sequence, like the inavailability of some materials, so change the working areas and the workforce from this area to the ready area or ready material or the local material or whatever. Changing the resources assigned to a designated area, which is the same like the scaffolding. Imagine that the scaffolding were erected in an area, and then after this, the material of this area is not ready as caused by the COVID-19, and then you decided to procure something locally which is more appropriate to another area which is far away from this area. And this is like dismantling the scaffolding again and re-erecting the scaffolding and reshifting the people from here to there. Second one is the delay of delivery of the material, like just we described from Italy and Spain overseas. Shutting down the factories, we have already explained this, and but the new thing here is that the opening will not be the same rate of progress. we all know about the learning curve. So once you shut down the factory and then turning on again will not give you the same progress as if the project is continuing to work. Next one, infected employees. So this is what we just said 2-3 slides ago. Will be in quarantine as well as whoever dealt with them. So maybe you continue to lose a big number of people from each department, or maybe from many departments as it could happen. Decrease the number of the labor or to control the infection spread. So you may came at an area which maybe accommodate 100 labor, and then you say we need to only accommodate 20 and create proper distancing between each one, and this will affect the progress. Curfew time restrictions, as we explained a while ago. So by saying this is maybe the explanations about the COVID-19. So now, what are the anticipated actions from the contractors? So the contractors will exercise the rights under the contract. Those actions or those rights may involve the following: notice for each announced impact or issued governmental decree. Each and every as long as the event is not yet over. So interim monthly claims, which includes the updates, particulars, and explaining the impact, are expected from the contractors. And this is actually one of the hardest thing. Until the moment, I didn't receive for some projects one interim claim, and this is the major thing. So the notice and the interim claim gives the engineer and the employer ideas about what the impact or what are the impacts, and then they may create or chase another solutions to decrease the impact or to eliminate something or to add something. So actually respecting the timing of the notices and the claims is so important. So this is what we explained. Then abidance by the notice is giving the employer, the engineer, an excuse. And I'm not meaning excuse like escaping from the responsibilities and or liabilities. It's only imagine there's something happening on March, and then you don't have the proper records, and then you send to the engineer saying this happened in March, and then I need 2 weeks extension of time. I need 100,000 Egyptian pounds per day. And if you said this since the beginning, the engineer may change his mind and may get the employer convenient to change the whole work with eliminating this. So actually sending the notices with the proper records and the claims every month it's actually saving both parties' rights. Updating the program time for completion. This is so essential. So once you have the updated program on time for completion, you can see the how the issue is going, and how and what each notice and claim will do with time for completion. One of the issues and big deals with some of the contractors that may exaggerate the impact. They may try to cover irrelevant delays. So anticipated response from the engineer. So the engineer is not obliged to respond back to each notice, but he has to acknowledge receiving every and each claim. If the contractor failed to provide the particulars on time, the employer must remind him to provide them, or maybe the engineer. So what are the famous reasons of disputes? So the overestimating of the related compensation from the contractor side, time and money. When I say this, I'm not saying this is intentional, but it might happen from time to time that you receive something like exaggerating the consequence, like saying, sorry, this is requiring 1 year of extension of time, and cost associated with this will be $1 million, despite the fact that the proper records or the records shows that maybe this is 3 times the reality. So once this happens, this creates hate between the parties, and the engineer and the employer mind saying that every single claim, which is not might be the case, is exaggerated from the contractor side, and then this might extend the time of determining everything, and then may getting more disputes. As we said before, the contractor may try to secure irrelevant delays. This will influence the level of trust between the parties. And this one is the most important one. The contractor may fail to provide adequate records and substantiations, may fail to submit monthly claims. And this is, as we said, will not be the benefit of both parties. No approved program, no correct base of evaluation or judgment. At the time, we don't say, we are not talking about the contractor is submitting a proper one and the engineer is procrastinating the approval. Are saying that the contractor may at some time is not providing the adequate updates, and then we don't have a program which could be the base of our calculations and updates. Other thing is different views of measurement to the progress of the work. I mean by different views, the simple thing which we say that I'm measuring by the area and you measuring by the linear meter, which is, this is maybe in the engineer favor or the employer favor, and this is will be on the contractor favor. So measuring one thing is different. Different views will create also disputes. Those items if the project continues, and simply if the project is suspended or termination, the different views of measurement will be the same. I mean, at the time of the suspension, the contractor will say, I have finished 80% of the works for all areas. And then once the engineer makes his survey, maybe he report 65 or 70. This is what I mean by different views here. A different view of once you have determination and the decision of the termination, and then the other problem is will increase or be added is the profit. So in some contracts, on some laws actually, is granting the contractor the rights to take percentage of his profit over the terminated, the part which is not fulfilled or not completed. So this is actually will increase the heat, and then imagine that the contractor requiring to take, let's say, 5% of 50% of the uncompleted works, the incompleted works, and the employer is suffering, is not having money. That's why he terminated the work. So saying this, we can now proceed with the tips to minimize those anticipated disputes. So actually the most appropriate thing, or the let's say the most simple thing, is doing a joint evaluation. Joint evaluation that today we hold workshop and say those attendees or those persons are hired from the employer side, those from the engineer side, and those from the contractor side. And this is 2 weeks plan to survey the executed works, materials, and everything. They need to take photos, they need to sign daily reports, they need to do everything, jointly agree on the percentage of everything. This is surely for in the perfect world, but what happening actually is they may find this not that easy, and then the parties disagrees, and then the parties try to resort to something else. That something else is the objective assessment to the work. Objective assessment to the work is simply hiring someone, just like the idea of the dispute board, hiring someone or entity or authority which can do this like independently, agrees, both parties agrees that those guys will inspect, survey the work, whatever comes from their side is binding on both parties. So the other advice is, if the client take the decision of suspension, small advice: the suspension shall not last for too long. Suspension lasts for too long is meaning that the client will pay every month the security and the safety and some unnecessary payment or unnecessary expenses. And on the other hand, termination decision shall be wisely assessed. So today, if we take the decision of termination, and then after 2 weeks we say, oh, this is the wrong one. On, let's say, not 2 weeks, after 6 months, the client discovered that this was wrong. So the suspension shall not last for too long, and the termination decision shall be wisely assessed, just to calculate everything: the client, the damages and the contractor entitlements, available material, what will be done, the contractor profit, this and this and that. So wisely assessment of both decisions shall be in place. And one other famous advice: proper records will save much time and effort. This might contain photos, daily reports, proper program, and the related updates. So, ladies and gentlemen, reaching the conclusion of my presentation. So the first one should be goes without saying: each party shall act in due diligence. Both parties shall cooperate to limit the COVID-19 consequences. One of the actions, or I do prefer to say, or advice, is making a unique series of meetings or workshops, like bi-weekly meetings to, and the first beginning it was daily meetings, like the status of the COVID-19 on everything, discussing the notices received, discussing the positive cases, discussing all over, but the safety precautions, the security measures, everything. And this should be, now it's bi-weekly meetings, but it should be held. It is helping, really helping. Adequate documentation and documentations and records have to be prepared, monitored, and updated. Again and again and again, timely notices and particulars shall be issued. Joint survey has to be undertaken, and this is an advice. This should be happening every day, not only at the time of the dispute. And this one, periodic meeting has to be undertaken. This is one is illustrated in the second conclusion. Okay, by saying this, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This is my contacts, and I'm happy to receive any questions.
Okay, Thank you, Ahmed. That was great. A lot of practical advice and your experience of basically dealing with consequences of COVID-19 and the situation that kind of all of us, nobody was prepared for, and everybody is finding their feet. What is the best way to deal with that? How to minimize the impact? I particularly liked, your advice and the part on joint evaluation, which definitely, would reduce any disputes or disagreements that may arise, and with that, further delays to the projects. I suppose construction industry, around the world, has been one of the industries that kept on going with whatever was available locally, and the sort of the impact has been mitigated on the ground. Different businesses have approached it differently. People working on site, some the ones who were able to work off site, from home. I suppose there were times where the restrictions were very strict, and everybody had to comply with the government direction and the advice that was received. So here in Qatar, we have experienced reduced hours. We had to comply with that. Certain projects have been exempted from that because they are related to the strategic projects for 2022. There is a pressure that there are still deadlines that we have to achieve. And in terms of claims, I suppose we have already started to feel whether or not the contractors are sort of being objective or realistic, or there are some of them see it as an opportunity. I suppose also, from the client's side, this is something where client has to be convinced and confident that any additional costs are real. Any additional costs are caused because that was the best way to deal with the situation. I suppose all of us have experienced the decisions and that seemed at the moment at that particular moment right, and might have been changed a few weeks later due to the changes, because all the situation and everything is very fluid. So Ahmed, from your experience and from basically dealing with the claims when they're presented, if they are perceived as either overclaimed, or there was not enough communication with the client in terms of explaining why these costs and these costs, that the client was alerted that these costs might come, or the sort of the at least estimate of them. What is, because sometimes you can just get in the situation where it's everything on stand, and where it's difficult to move, because if you have one party that believes that they're entitled to it, and you have another party that does not feel that the costs submitted are realistic.
Mm-hmm. The first and the direct impact is delaying the assessment. delaying the action or decision. If we are talking about normal claim, and then the contractor submits a claim which is, let's say, exaggerated, as we said before, and then the client in his mind that this is only deserves 1/3 or 1/5 of what the contractor have claimed already. So the first direct impact or consequence is delaying the determination, and then at some time you feel that the project is at large, there is no time for completion, and then continuing like saying tomorrow we will issue the determination, and then we ask the contractor to submit something which is in your mind, on the engineer mind, or the employer mind is not proper documentation, and then you dispute over the interpretation of the clause. This is the contractor saying I have submitted the particulars and everything is correct. The engineer is saying no, those are not correct or adequate documentation or substantiation, and then this only will impact the time of decision. Despite the fact it's 42 days, it may take 4 months to issue the decision. And from this to this point to this point, maybe the time will be at large. There's no time for completion. Other thing is a dispute over the associated cost. For sure, if you cannot determine or you don't have the proper documentation for the time, you will not have the proper documentation of the cost. And this surely will create more heat than the time. So the money, the money is the oxygen of the construction industry. So once you decrease this or eliminate this, the contractor may issue notice of suspension, or this is not the entitlement. And then again, one of the good points in the FedEx contracts that they are at the beginning, and then you might be aware of the events. They're meeting the parties on regularly basis, maybe a quarterly basis, and then that determination will not take that long, and the determination or the decision of the dispute board is binding on both parties. So I guess this is what I have for this question.
Okay, and we have another question, which is which you have explained, you have answered, I suppose, part of it. The question is how to evaluate the time. Let me just, okay, how to evaluate the time impact during the COVID. So it's
Okay.
$1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah, this is really a hard one. Okay, as we said, until the moment we don't have the clear vision of the impact of the COVID-19. So since, let's say, since March this year, and then until the situation of the COVID-19 is over, or the project is finished, you cannot say that the impact is this time. So the solution, the most appropriate solution, is to again sending monthly update of the impact, and then after each update you have to receive a determination from the engineer. The most tangible thing, which is as far as I see for the COVID-19, is the supply chain. So if you have the procurement is affected and you don't have alternative you can supply, so you cannot determine the time. Simply you don't have the product, you can't store the product, and then you have to wait until whoever is fabricating this product is live again, and then you start determining the time. I hope I answered the question, but this is actually what I have.
Yeah. Okay. So, for example, I will tell you on one of our projects, we at a time when all of this happened, and with materials approvals, so with the procurement we have gone quite far down the line, and then a lot of things needed to be resubmitted, but the client was very quick and agile to basically respond to this and to enable the team on site to act. So, you know, this particular thing, it came down. I mean, contractor was, you know, this was not in their, they could not make a decision to change something they could propose. But however, when the client drives and recognizes the restrictions, or, you know, the risk or uncertainty of, you know, we can't just say, let's wait and see how it goes.
Yes,
so
yes.
you know, there is a great benefit to have a client that that will recognize that quickly, is able, you know, to make that decision and substitute, you know, whatever was impossible to get at the time to something that is possible to get, even though, you know, no doubt, you know, some delays have happened. You know, the other
But I can
thing.
guarantee that there's something you cannot provide alternative for. There's something
Absolutely,
which should be like this and should be installed
absolutely,
as designed. Yes. So this
absolutely.
here the problem will happen, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but even then, it's up to the client to decide whether or not it's worth for waiting for that. Is that particular item that critical to the project, or it can be, you know, it can be replaced with something else.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
cost
Sure.
of,
Yes.
let's even temporary, you know, if it's something that's really critical and it's a signature of the project, or, you know, whether or not there
Yeah.
is solution, a temporary solution.
100%. Yes. 100%.
Yeah, and we have another question here. As COVID-19 is considered as a force majeure event, does the contractor is the contractor entitled to compensation?
So, okay, this is again is based on the contract interpretation. So if the contract interpretation says this is a force majeure, which is not the FedEx contracts, so compensation for the time, yes, for sure. Compensation for the money, this is based on, again, the interpretation of the contract, but most probably you will extend the time, and then you will pay something more, and then yes, you have to be compensated.
Yeah, yeah.
But if the works have been suspended, when the compensation will not be the same like the progress of the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one, Ahmed, if we for example, right now in Qatar, what we're experiencing a shortage in labor.
Yeah.
And
okay.
with that, we have increase now in cost of the labor. So
Okay.
if again, you know, in as you suggested and talked about earlier, about basically meeting regularly, you know, and depending on the size of the project and the sort of the intensity of the project, you know, these meetings will be either when required or they will be regular. There should be openness to instantly recognize these things from the client's perspective, and how to mitigate the basically client has signed the value, and this is what they are expecting. Now we have different factors influencing, and if the contractor comes, okay, you know, now I have to pay for this, you know, maybe 5% more, 10% more, 30% more, depending on whatever it is. What is the and based, you know, that's backed up, that's market situation. What would that depend on? Because if that's not accepted, there will be further delay because the contractor cannot absorb or will not want to absorb additional costs.
So okay, let's first discuss the reason of this. So if the reason of this is governmental decrees or something came from the government, just like increasing the life expense. Maybe this is the situation, and then now the laborers are suffering monthly expenses more than they were suffering, and then this is a straightforward claim. So the contractor, yes, it's right, the contractor to have or to be compensated for this. So let's say the contractor another situation where the contractor needs to hire more technical people or more technical laborers who are more expensive than those for the complexity of the work. So this is the contractor risk. So it's one case or the other. If the case created by the government or by the client by a way or the other. So let's say the COVID-19 have this impact and increased the labor cost, and then now he has to claim this, and he has to be compensated for this. But if it's like the market situation, like the work are booming on Qatar, and then the companies are hiring more people, and the people are not available, and for this the labor cost is increasing. So this is the contractor risk. If it's something comes from the decree or from the client or from the decree from the government, so yes, the contractor has to be compensated.
Okay.
Yeah, this is answering the question.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay, and in terms of going, okay, I'm just looking at another question. Going back to the time, and how to evaluate the time. Sometimes the contractor will be aware of the more of the costs for materials and the labor rather than for the cost of the time. How do you put these together?
No, okay. So now, let's say if you talk about the cost of the time, the time, correct?
First cost.
Okay. So now most of the contracts has something like the preliminaries or bill one, which is containing the monthly expenses from the contractor. And then based on this is our items, which is maybe breakdown to 15 or 20 items, which the contractor is providing every month. So the time is increased from 1 year to 2 years with excusable delays, which is beyond the contractor control. So he has to be paid with the same amount if the progress are the same, or let's say the progress is 10% and or some percentage, 5% per month, and then he has to finish on 1 year. And the 5% is costing $100,000. And then now the project is continuing with the same progress as the works have been increased, and the time is extended with excusable delay to 2 years. So the contractor has to be compensated with the same bill one or the same preliminaries, the $1,000 for the 2 years.
Yeah,
this is the straightforward thing. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Once when you have determined, how much longer, what is the extension, but when you, for example, when you're changing the procurement, so your increased cost, and you can, as a contractor, you can claim for that, but you do not have all the information on time, or you're not certain on time in terms of shipping, in terms of, because there are still some uncertainties even in solutions that are found right now. Even then, even they can be, it's a movable thing.
So they sign or they agree preliminary or payment on account for a time, and then they agree that by the time of November 2020 they will sit down and determine the time of which is associated with the change. So they have to pay something on account which is not signed or it's not agreed. Like we would pay 50,000 Egyptian or $1,000 per month, and then we reach November, and by November the contractor has to submit us the program, and then we determine the program, and then everything is agreed.
Okay.
So you pay something like to push the works.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like the advance payment.
That's yeah. The next one, and I suppose we will wrap up with this one. So with now basically things starting to become better to what they were 2, 3, 4 months ago. Everybody's trying to catch up now and do as much work and sort of make up for the lost time, one way or the other. For the program crashing, what is the contractor's entitlement for it, and if there any entitlement for that?
Or you mean that the contractor will absorb the delays, and then he will
Yes.
increase the labor work? Yeah, so okay, so how we calculate it, or say, or
Yes.
what are the compensation?
What is the entitlement for the contractor?
So it's like the incentives. When we say that the project is the determination or the assessment, the normal assessment with the normal progress will extend the project for 6 months, and then the contractor say I can finish on time by increasing the labor, increasing the material, providing something like air freight instead of shipping. So this, and providing the document, the substantiations of everything, and then he get those costs with percentage of incentive from the client. If he achieves the date, like say, if the remaining works were worth $10 million, and then he pay $5 million more, so the employer may agree with the contractor to give him 2% or 5% as incentive. You didn't get it, or?
Sorry, I could not hear you after 2% or 5%. That was the last thing that I heard.
Okay, so what I'm saying is the if now again, if the remaining works are worth $10 million, and then the contractor will spend $3 or $5 million more to achieve or to complete the work and the crashed time, and then he will get paid those additional costs with a percentage of incentive, like 10% of this, like the cost plus thing, or like something which is giving him some advantage of the money as a incentive that he finished earlier than the scheduled.
Yeah, or the revised. But you do recommend first assessing the situation as it is and what is the realistic end date, and then do the crushing based on that.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. With that, Ahmed, we will conclude the questions and answers. I want to thank you for giving us your time tonight and sharing with us
It's my pleasure.
expertise and your experience. The presentation was full of invaluable information and practical advice and guidance on how to deal with this, hands-on, on the ground, with things that all of us are, working with all day, every day. So I present you with the certificate of appreciation on behalf of...
I do appreciate it very much. Thank you very much.
Okay. Our absolute pleasure, Ahmed. I will just briefly mention the following NAWIC Qatar webinars. So we will have one more webinar on construction contract claims. And after that, we will have a webinar on a new labor law and experiences with previous current situation that some people may have found themselves in, and how all of this will be improved with what with the new law that that is going to be introduced. I'm not sure what is the date, but by the time our webinar is on, I'm sure we will have all the information. So
Thank you very much. Yes.
thank you again.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you. It's my honor. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our attendees for their time and for joining us tonight. My apology again for a little hiccup that we had at the beginning. Stay safe and well, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you very much, and have a good evening all.
Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.